Good morning and welcome to the Problem of Being Awake. My name's Ben, I'll be your host. And the transgender issue is coming to a head in the US election because so far this phenomenon of a trans wave, which is directly proportionate to when it was declassified as a mental health disorder in 2019. At that point it affected 0.004% of people. Now ask yourself in 5 years how that's changed, how we get even percentages. But in some groups, like the protest group, is represented in some ways 30% or 20% or 15% by LGBT members, and most of them are of the T varieties in various different gender identities. Suddenly it got declassified and people made up initially about 100 genders, then they had micro identities, so that makes millions, and I've actually heard somebody say there's billions. Now this is getting ridiculous. You can't just because you feel different every day, like we all do and always have, doesn't mean you change your identity publicly every single day or every single week or even every month or even every 6 months. You can experiment with ideas, play gracefully with them in your head until you work out what suits your identity. See, I'm in my 40s. My identity's never changed. I've never gone out and made a statement about anything. I am a white heterosexual male, but if I was homosexual, I wouldn't care. It just means I'm attracted to a different sex. And if you look at the research going back 35 years on transgender sex or gender affirming care, sex change operations, it was never before done on minors. And 85+% in every study show that with the right therapy and time to think about it, people choose to stay in the same body and they almost always enter same-sex relationships. So they were just gay. You add autism and ADHD, which is most people who transition have another underlying mental health disorder. It's really trying to treat mental health, which for a short time was allowed into the sun. And then people were looking at children's mental health, and then suddenly this came along and it took over all the funding for children's mental health and it took over all the emphasis on it. Now, if their mental health is wrong, in parts of the world, in parts of America certainly, but still the trend is here. It's in England, it's in the underground, it's gone to the black market since it's not legal now in England. You know, the trend is there, and it makes no sense other than it's socially taught. Gender dysphoria or trans ideology has been installed into our children. It did not grow naturally. Also, the surgery is successful only once in every 2 attempts, so every other transition surgery has to be redone. We accept 1 in 14 for a medical necessity in England, and yet it's 1 in 2 for an elective surgery. That's not acceptable to me. And the amount of children who suffer, and they use horrible lines. They tell parents that their children are going to commit suicide if they don't agree to what they want. That's not true. There is a slight, people who suffer with gender dysphoria have a slight more propensity to teenage suicide than other teenagers who also have anxiety and depression. Teenage suicidality can be linked to social media almost exactly. But the actual fact of suicidality and gender identity is 2 years after successful surgery, which proves it isn't the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do en masse. There should be no groups charging for this. There should be no NGOs. There should be nobody profiting off this. This is something that is intimate. It affects the people. And if you are someone who genuinely believes you're in the wrong body, seek professional help from people who've dealt with many people who have that experience, because that's how you're going to find out exactly what's right for you. And I'm not passing judgment on what's right for people. There's Blair White. She's a fantastic woman. She is a transsexual. She is of the original group. who I have to say are now reporting much more transphobia in the world. So that's another negative that's come from that. So realistically, we need to have a sort of house cleaning on how we approach this. I think this issue will come to a head in the US election. You know, when you start pushing these ideas on people who just want, who are religious or who and want to work and feed their families, they don't like the idea, and lots of people are very worried about their children in schools at the moment. And if we can't trust our governments, which it's been proven we can't in the last 5 years, we need to be extra vigilant, and that shouldn't be on us. The education system should be extra vigilant. Parental rights should reign supreme. Yet in Tim Walz's state, in Minnesota, parental rights mean nothing if you don't immediately agree to gender affirming care. If your child at 10 in Minnesota comes back and you deny them surgery, they can immediately have you. That is classified as child abuse under Tim Walz's law that he made, and they can be taken away from their parents in custody by any adult who's never met them, and then they can go through the whole gender affirming surgery, and then they can, if they wish, return to their parents. It is a diabolical thing, and it's happened under our watch. The US election will bring it to a head. I hope Trump wins, because he will put in that 18-year-old ban. So 18 years old, you can make that decision. But below that, your brain is still forming. You don't know exactly how you feel. And making irreparable surgical differences to yourself in your teens is likely to destroy your life. Not in every case, but in most, it does. And we're seeing that play out in the facts and the figures and the aftercare, which is lapse. So, you know, groups of people have had to come together to get the aftercare data, but it doesn't look good. And if you look at the Hass report from the UK and the WPATH files leaked by Michael Schellenberger on environmentalsuccess.org, WPATH is the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, and they are fraudulent completely. And they've been advising every gender clinic in Europe, the whole of the NHS in the UK, which is why we stopped it all as soon as we found out that they were not who they said they were. They have not the professional qualifications they say they have, or the experience. One of them even has a fetish for the surgery, but yet he's allowed to do it. It's insane. If you look at environmentalsuccess.org, it's all there in black and white. You can read all the files, you can watch the video. It's horrible. They have been advising gender clinics all over America, and it's the wrong advice. And that is really, really a simple thing to get right. So I pray that the US election elects Donald Trump, and there is a halt in this movement to medically transition our children to their own detriment. And then we can work through it socially. But unless there's a halt, unless there's a stop in the craze, unless there is punishment for people who are doing it illegally, it won't stop. It will just go underground. There'll be more black market trans surgeries, and they'll be more risky and more dangerous and have a less likely success rate than 50%. So this madness has to stop. I'll leave it there. But this is an issue that will continue until it is put back into proportion, and the people who really need help get it and don't feel like they just have to join part of a group, because a group dynamic, a group can't have gender dysphoria, only an individual can. I'll leave it there. You be lucky, I'll be good, and I'll speak to you soon.